I'd like to call this meeting to order. Everyone, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Patty, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor Marino?
Here.
Vice Mayor Woods?
Here, ma'am.
Councilmember Marciano?
Here.
Councilmember Lane?
Here.
Councilmember Litt?
Here. Everyone's cell phones off? Or at least on vibrate, please? I had to do that with my own. So this evening we're here for a workshop, and the Florida Department of Transportation is going to educate us a little this evening. So you have the floor.
Okay, good evening, council members and residents of the city of Palm Beach Gardens. My name is Donovan Pessoa. I've been with the department for 29 years, 2 days. I'm just joking.
Yeah, we know you're retired.
Well, last time we met here a couple of months ago, or a while back, I was asked to go back and revisit the noise study that we did in PD&E, and that we did. And we're here tonight to update you on the findings of that noise study. With me tonight is our noise consultant, Bernard Kenny, from Bernard Kenny and Associates, Yolette Miguel from HDR, and Francisco Avalier, also from HDR. All right, I'll go through this little presentation, and then, I'll open up for questions from the council members, and however the council members would like to direct questions from the residents.
Thank you.
All right. First, I want to give you a little bit of background on how does an area or a development gets qualified for noise wall. And if you follow with me, there are existing features. We've got a 4-lane out there divided. Design speed, 70 miles an hour, posted 55, because now it's a rural typical, and we'll get into a little bit more into that. But 55 miles an hour, that's what we have existing out there. And span wire signal, no sidewalks, no ramps, proposed what it will be. We're going up to 6 lanes, but the speed, we will design it at 50 miles an hour. We'll lower the speed to 45 miles an hour due to the introduction of curb and gutter. Well, once curb and gutter, once that gets introduced into the design, the speed has to be lowered. Because at 55 miles an hour, which is the rural typical you have out there currently, if vehicle hits curb at 55 miles an hour, chances are they go airborne. So once we introduce curb and gutter within the roadway, the posted speed automatically drops to 45 miles an hour. And now we will do, drainage system, 5-foot sidewalks on both sides minimum, with ADA pedestrian ramps, such like new signals, etc., etc. 3 ways to qualify for your noise study. An existing roadway, lane capacity expansion. An existing road alignment is significantly altered. That means if we change the alignment enough, bringing the roadway closer to the development, then we have to justify doing a study, or just a new roadway. Number one, or the first one and the second one, would qualify your community for such a study, and that's what we did back in PD&E. FDOT noise policy, and it goes into the PDA manual, and if you look at that, it'll tell you what our governing model, impacted area 66 decibel or greater. Now, what that means is that if you have an area and that the noise level is over 66 decibel, then we start getting into too much noise, and then we have to start really going into the study. And if we have 2 impacted receptors, you must, when you try to model a study, you have to achieve a 5 decibel reduction. And Mr. Kenny here, once we get through the presentation, he will get into all the technical noise, decibels and all that stuff that you probably want to ask him about. But those are the requirements. 1 impacted receptor must achieve 7 decibel reduction in noise. And noise barrier costs not to exceed $42,000 per benefit receptor or per residence. Project limits, and we'll briefly go over those from North Lake to Blue Heron. When the study was conducted, they had 112 noise receptors placed for the whole entire limit. We had 5 areas of study, and you could probably see from there, or that little board over there in the corner, you could visit that board, and you see the different areas of study that we conducted, where receptors were placed. And the 5 areas are Dyer Park, VA Hospital, Steeplechase, PGA National, and some other undeveloped area. Iron Horse is also included in some other areas out there. But we basically went out, put in all these noise receptors, and we basically took all the noise, then take it back, and then they project the traffic volume and do a whole modeling and come back with how much noise would be received over the 20 years, which is the design life of the roadway. This shows a little picture diagram of all the areas where receptors were placed. And your development is coming on the next slide. And that's where people who live in Steeplechase will have observed that at some point in time there was a little stand out there with a little microphone thing on it, recording the noise level. And our findings, Iron Horse, which doesn't concern you much, but as far as a requirement, no. Dyer Park, no. VA Hospital, no. Steeplechase, no. PGA National, no. We're going to be doing a piece of noise wall that will benefit Steeplechase when we do that 10-lane bridge section for the turnpike. And the off-ramp heading northbound will get a noise wall until it gets elevated to a certain height, where that noise wall will not be required anymore. Now we're still on schedule as far as our construction dates are concerned. Plans will be completed by March 21st, 2020. Construction awarded by July 28, 2021. And construction, we figure, somewhere about 3 years. That turnpike bridge will take a while to get built. And last time I was here, someone asked about other concurrent projects that will be going on within the same time span, which the North Lake I-95 intersection improvement. Plans will be completed October. Construction get awarded March 30th. And we figure probably about 2 years on that construction. And that's where we are. And I know the questions are going to come. And I'm no noise expert. Mr. Kenny here has been doing noise for the department for over 25 years. And he could answer any questions you have on noise. Any project-related questions, I'm here to answer. Noise-specific questions, so we could, are there any questions from
I'm sure there's
council members?
questions.
Yeah, I have. I like
Hold
to,
on.
Go ahead.
Let's let the chair recognize people that want to talk. We'll do this in an orderly fashion.
I'd like to speak.
And Matthew, you are recognized by the chair.
Thank you. Mr. Pessoa, nice to see you again. This
Nice
issue is
to be here.
very important to me. Now, I've worked with the Steeplechase HOA President Dave Moore, with Steeplechase HOA Vice President Amir Cannell, with Tom DeRita, who's here, and with the residents of Steeplechase for almost a year. And when representatives from FDOT informed me that you greatly valued input from our local elected public officials, at my request, our County Commissioner, Hal Valashe, who's here, wrote a letter to FDOT supporting our efforts to encourage FDOT to build a wall between Steeplechase and the Beeline Highway. Our state representative, Rick Roth, is also here tonight to encourage FDOT to build that wall between Steeplechase and the Beeline Highway. And you need to know that on May 3rd, 2018, the Palm Beach Gardens City Council unanimously passed a resolution supporting our residents and encouraging FDOT to build a wall between Steeplechase and the Beeline Highway. Now, the reason that we're encouraging FDOT to build this wall is that this expansion project is going to result in a substantial increase in the amount of traffic, which will not only increase the level of road noise for this community, it's also going to increase the levels of pollution and airborne particulate debris. Additionally, the surface of this roadway will be above the height of the existing boundary wall, and the traffic will be directly visible from the homes at Steeplechase. And this is going to have an adverse effect on their property values. Additionally, the planned expansion includes the construction of sidewalks and bike lanes, as you just discussed, along the perimeter of this community. There's going to be a loss of privacy for the residents of this community. And finally, and most importantly, this expansion will provide a number of access points that can be used to gain entry into this community. With this expanded unauthorized access comes the likelihood of additional crime in this community. Now, then Police Chief Steve Stepp from our Palm Beach Gardens Police Department spoke to the members of the Steeplechase community at their annual meeting and told them that he was concerned that this planned expansion would create a security risk for this community. Now, the safety of our residents in this community is of paramount concern to me as a council member and to the rest of us as a city council. And the solution would be to create a 5 to 6 foot berm and construct a 10-foot wall along the perimeter of Steeplechase, just as FDOT did when it constructed the Beeline Highway exit on the Turnpike. So for these reasons, Mr. Pessoa, I'm strongly encouraging FDOT to build a wall between Steeplechase and the Beeline Highway as part of this project. Thank you.
Please, no clapping. Sorry.
Thank you, Councilman. Comment well noted.
Rochelle, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. I went out there yesterday and drove the site, and I've walked the site before too, and I can tell you at my low height, I can breach that wall easily without even going through the bushes in some of the spots. So the safety out there is a big concern. I know that doesn't have to do with the noise study, but it is another factor that has to be taken into account when we decide if this wall is going to be built. You can see the traffic, and that's before the road comes in one more lane and a turn lane in there. It's above my head level when I'm standing street level in some of the places out there. So not only do you see it from the road, but inside the house, the back of the house, out the front window, you can see and hear the traffic. We all know that the port's expanding. There's a lot that they haven't told us about what their future plans are, but there's a lot that we already know. And the truck traffic and the container traffic is going to get much, much heavier down the Beeline, which is why we know that you want to expand the road to begin with. What I heard tonight that concerns me even more, and is something that I don't think has been brought up before, you said they're going to lower the speed to 45 miles an hour because cars and trucks can go airborne if they hit the curb any faster after the curb and the gutter are added, because they don't exist right now. Nobody goes 55 miles an hour on that road. We're lucky if they go 70 on that road. They're not going to go 45, and some truck is going to land on someone's house or child in the middle of the street. You also said it's going to take 3 years to construct that road. That's 3 years of construction noise that has nothing to do with the traffic noise that's going to follow after it. I think it's unfair to expect the residents of Steeplechase to live with that.
Thank you. Well said. I can't do anything about the clapping. Mark.
Well, the comment that I have to make is really unrelated to the numbers. I mean, I know you're doing your science, and the science and the numbers are going to suggest something. And based on your findings, the numbers don't add up. The problem with that is, in my personal experience in my first home here in the city, we had an issue and we had a sound ordinance, and the whole thing what happened was that at the end of the day, the numbers didn't add up. But there was a tremendous effect on our quality of life. The property value and the enjoyment of our property was greatly diminished. So I understand that you have to do a study to try to justify one way or the other, but you're not taking in, and I don't know if this particular study is meant to look at the big picture, but our job is to look at the big picture and say thank you for your information, but we have a number of other factors that we have to take into consideration. You know, if someone buys a home next to I-95 and they call and complain about the noise, you say, well, you bought a house next to I-95. The people that lived in Steeplechase and live in Steeplechase and have lived there for 20 years or more, they knew that Beeline was there, but there was never a plan to expand the highway to be so close to their properties. There was never any suggestion that this was going to happen 20 years ago. And now you're basically saying, sorry, your property values are going to go down the toilet because we're going to go ahead and build our road, which has to be built. I don't think anybody's saying the road shouldn't be built or it doesn't have to be built, but you have to look at this on a personal level and understand that these are people's homes and this is their life. And I know you want to, and I'm not saying that you're cold-hearted and you have no desire to look at these people in the face and say your property values and your quality of life is not important, but you have to look at that. And until this process includes that, you're going to hear from not just the residents, but us as well, because this is what's important to this community. So I'm glad that you're here, and thank you for the presentation. But this is where we're going to be coming from, because it's not just a number that we're worried about. It's a quality of life issue, and that's the big picture.
Thank you, Mark.
For coming, Councilman.
Carl.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. We all agree that the road's going to be higher, and I'm not going to be redundant because all of the council's presentations have been pretty spot on. Is there a study on the amount of road debris that's going to be going over the wall on these people's porches and houses and screens that are going to be ruining their screened-in patios and their driveways? And is there a study on the increase of traffic crashes that are going to happen in the area, possibly vehicles being launched over a berm with no wall, no protection? No studies on those?
No.
Okay. Out of curiosity, and I appreciate you coming with your presentation. I understand that you're presenting FDOT's opinion. From here, with community input, and you can see we stand together with our community, where does this workshop go from your perspective? What do you do with the information that you're receiving here, and who listens to you from here?
Well, I have already discussed that with our director, and at department, the director is one step below the secretary, who is the head, Jerry O'Reilly, the head of District 4.
Where's his office at?
Commercial Boulevard. Okay. But he, in that office, the director is one step below his position. Once it leaves the District 4 office, it has to go to Tallahassee. Okay. And that's where all final decisions are made. So I've already discussed the findings of the report with the director, and she said, Donovan, go and make a presentation and come back and tell me what has happened. So that I'll take back with me to the office tomorrow. And as council members, you have the right to go back to the secretary, since the decision is basically made at the director's level, you take it up with the secretary.
Understood.
If it should go to Tallahassee, before anything can happen, it will come right back to the district office, because Tallahassee will not necessarily get involved until the district has exhausted all its resources.
Understood.
So the next step is, from where I stand, is going back to Jerry O'Reilly. And I'm pretty much sure he'll get a report on the situation here tonight, first thing tomorrow morning.
And
But
these-
after I brief the director.
Your numbers, or your decision in short, is based on numbers and money, correct?
Well, it's more so the science. I mean, the 42,000 per resident, that's like a threshold. They don't want to spend $100,000 per resident to build a wall. But the denser some of these communities are, then if you get $42,000 per residence, then you could do a hell of a lot. If you start spreading out the homes a little bit, $42,000 per resident doesn't get you very far. But it's always the numbers first and the science before we actually get into the dollar value. Because if the science had come back and say the noise level out there is going to be in excess of what is allowed, then we would probably, turn a blind eye somewhat to the numbers and deal with the science. But as far as the science is concerned, when we did all that we could do based on our policy, the numbers came back that it wasn't justified.
Well, understand. Can you bring this back to your report that apparently this is going to turn into a political situation, so we're going to need to be told no on every single level all the way up to the governor's office?
And that's the right to the commission and all the members. That's your right. As I say, I'm here as an engineer to bring you what the DOT does in terms of policy and how we conduct our business. Once it gets above the engineering aspect of it and it goes into the political aspect of it, that's where the engineering stops.
Understood.
Rochelle, you had another question?
Could you take the project, the presentation back a few slides? There was a slide, the final one that had, did it meet the specifications? No. Did it meet the specifications? No. For some reason, next to the steeplechase one, it said not feasible. It didn't say no. What does the difference between not feasible and a no?
I'll let
That
Mr.
one.
Kenny answer your question for you. You mean that one? This one?
Yeah, that one.
Okay. Go ahead and answer the question. No, you could stand up. You could stand
Just
up.
as long as
Use
you
the mic.
speak into a microphone.
Use the mic. Oh, you have a mic there, right there. Go ahead.
Okay, so this table basically shows all 5 noise-sensitive areas. Where it says noise wall required no, that means that 2042 build year sound levels did not meet 66 decibels. No. When you get the steeplechase, where it says no, not feasible, within steeplechase there were 2 homes. One home just north of the gate was 65.8 in the build year. That's below 66. The adjoining tennis court was 67 decibels. You had a separation distance of between 120 versus 92 feet. Department policy, which changed in 2010, requires before you can model a noise barrier, you have to have a minimum of 2 impacted receptors, because past history tells you it's next to impossible to build a concrete noise barrier to protect one home to get a reasonable reduction. So what that not feasible means is you have to have 2 benefited receptors that achieve 5 decibels of noise reduction. If you have just one single standalone location or residence, it's not feasible by definition. The department, when you go into the noise studies, you have 3 tiers you have to meet. You have 4 tiers. You have a capacity expansion. We have to do a noise study under state and federal law. Your next step is you have to have at least 2 impacted receptors that meter exceeds 66 decibels. If you can get 2 of them, you have to model a wall like I did at PGA. But those 2 impacted receptors have to get a minimum of 5 decibels of reduction. If you can meet that, one of them, and that's a feasibility factor. The next step is under the reasonableness factor, one of them has to get 7 decibels of reduction. That's your noise reduction design goal. You don't see that here. because we never got that far. So DOT looks at you have to have at least 2 locations impacted. Steeplechase had 1. So by definition, it can never be feasible because you need 2 residences or 2 homes that get 5 decibels of reduction.
You're talking homes, you're talking a tennis court. You're saying basically that a tennis court is going to qualify as a home that could make this not feasible?
No. DOT has 5 different categories for activity categories. Activity category B is residential. The exterior sound level limit is 66. Activity category C includes schools, churches, parks, doctors' hospitals, doctors' offices, stadiums, stuff like that, outdoor tennis courts, basketball courts, stadiums and arenas like that. 66 is a number for that. They both have the same activity category. Generally, a tennis court, if it was for public use, it's a special use location, we would have to go in and see how much it's used over a 24-hour period to see if we can meet the cost. Since this is a private community, I gave the benefit that that tennis court exterior location, because that's what we look at, the exterior location closest to the road is a noise-sensitive receptor, just like the home. The problem with Steeplechase is you only had 2 exterior locations closest to the road, and out of those 2, only one of them went over 66. The home was 65.8 at the swimming pool, at the closest edge of the home, 65.8. That's below 66. I mean, you have to go back and look at FHWA's policy, 23 CFR 772. The FHWA classifies a residential area for exposure to do a noise study at 67 decibels. Each state in the country, and every state has to pick an approach criteria that's within 2 decibels of that. Back in the 90s, FDOT used 65, a lot of backlash, because if it was 65.8, you didn't get anything. So we moved up to 66. So if you're under 66, it's based on department policy, there is no impact, there is no wall study, you move on to the locations that go over 66. The tennis court, which was Steeplechase 51 on the board over there, was 67 decibels. It was closer to the road than the back side of the home, or the front side of the home was. So if you have a single impact location, by definition, it's not feasible because you can't meet the noise reduction factor. When I get up to PGA, there were 2 homes, 66.3. Now you have 2 homes that are impacted. You have to computer model a noise wall for that because there are 2 homes. Couldn't meet the 5 decibel reduction or the 7 decibel reduction without going over the $42,000 cost criteria. So when you look at these DOT noise studies, they're not designed to not give people a barrier. They're designed to follow, and this policy is upheld uniformly throughout the state of Florida. It doesn't matter if you're in Miami or Tallahassee or in Panama City, it's the same. You have to have 2 impacted residences or structures that are either activity category B, C, or E that go over 66. Once you meet that, then you have to model a wall to see if you can bring them both down to 5. The 5 decibels reduction is a minimum that the DOT allows for a benefit because changes in sound less than 3 decibels are negligible. The 7 decibels that I talked about earlier is the department's, it's a noise reduction design goal. It's a reasonableness factor. The DOT historically went back to 1979. We took an average of all the noise reductions across the state of Florida for the walls we built, 7.36. So 7 is what we call the reasonableness factor. In the old days, prior to 2010, you only had to meet 5, but we always try to go 8 to 10. So Steeplechase is not feasible because if it's a single receptor location and it's only one impacted, by definition, you can't get 2 receptors that meet 5 decibels of reduction because you only have 1. DOT changed this policy because if you do this stuff long enough, you know that you can never, with the money you have, the $42,000 equates to 100 lineal feet at 14 feet high times the construction cost of $30 a square foot, that's your $42,000. It's impossible to build a wall for one isolated receptor to get at least 5 decibels of reduction, to get the 7 and to meet the cost, it's impossible.
Can I ask you a
But
question?
once you get to 2, now I just finished a job up on Midway Road. Just let me finish. I did a job up on Midway Road. I had two residences that were both impacted. I did a job up on Midway Road where we had 2 impacted receptors, but they were 28 feet away from the department's right-of-way line. That wall worked because the separation distance was so small that the shadow zone was greater. When you start looking at steeplechase, you have a fair amount, the distance from that tennis court to the edge of our build alternative alignment was 92 feet. At 120 feet back, you are below 66. That's what those yellow contour lines mean. So steeplechase didn't model a wall because we don't model walls for one receptor that's impacted because it's not feasible by definition. It's a fatal flaw. PGA, we had 2. I modeled wall heights, 12 feet, 16 feet, 18 feet high at 400 feet long. The best reduction I could get was 4.1, and I was already way over cost. So I backed it up, and I took the 2 homes. I applied the DOT's cost formula, made the wall 200 feet long at 14 feet high, because that's going to meet the cost. That wall only yielded a 2 decibel reduction. Again, the home is separated far back from the road with a driveway with a street in front of it. These noise barriers cast what's called an acoustical shadow zone. If you go behind the 22-foot high barrier and stand up against it, you won't hear hardly any traffic. But as you start to back up further and further away, at some point in time you're going to hear the traffic readily. That means you're leaving the outside of your shadow zone. So the problem with these locations are there's not enough impacted receptors to even model a wall. You only have one at Steeplechase. I modeled all the homes, every home in that area, every other home we modeled. In the area where we had the impact, every home was modeled. And like I said, only one of them went over 66. So it's a fatal flaw. You're all done. There's nothing we can do under department policy.
So what I'm hearing is FDOT's going to build a road that's going to make so much noise that even a wall is not going to make a difference for the residents of Steeplechase.
That's not what I said. I said that the Department of Transportation constructs noise barriers that meet the department's policy, which has been approved by the Federal Highway Administration under 23 CFR 772. We build barriers where we can achieve a reasonable amount of noticeable reduction while meeting the cost criteria. I mean, you have to get the 5 and 7 decibels of reduction. Once you can meet that, then you go to cost. If you're over the cost, then maybe you have an argument, but generally we do not go over the cost criteria, because if you do it once, you're going to do it all the time. I mean, it's...
Can I ask a question, a technical question, if I may? How do you estimate the amount of noise that's going to be coming once the road is built and once you have the added traffic? How do you know, like, where do you generate that noise from, and how do you know what kind of sound is going to be coming from that distance?
We take the build alternative alignment for the 6-lane urban-suburban section that the department provides. We take the elevation data within a department's right-of-way that goes into the model. We do 3 separate model calculation runs. The first one is existing year 2015. That uses the department's traffic for the year 2015. For the no-build condition in 2042, we take the design year traffic as if we weren't going to build the road. Then we do the build 24 condition where we're going to build the road. So you have to take the design year traffic and the posted speeds, you put that into the model with all of the receptor points that you pick, and T&M 2.5 is going to calculate a sound level. If you calculate 66.0 or greater, it's going to say sound level impact. Then you have to model a wall. But like I said, in 2010, the department eliminated the computer modeling of noise barriers for single receptor locations because they never work.
So what do you just put a speaker out there and blast it based on the sound that you think?
Exactly, do the whole study. The computer modeling part takes into account design year traffic and the design year roadway alignment with a posted speed. The field measurement portion is used to validate the model. What we do is go out to representative locations, and I was in PGA National, and I was in Steeplechase. I believe I met with one of the HOA board members when we set the instruments up. And what we do is we take repetitive 10-minute sound level measurements, 3 in a row, and at the same time we're taking those sound level measurements, you have to use Class 2 or better instrumentation. I use Class 1. It's the most accurate you can get. You record the sound level for those 10-minute intervals while someone is out at the edge of the right-of-way counting the vehicles and taking radar speeds of what's happening out there today in a present condition. You take that, you computer model that under the existing condition, and the premise is you have to be within 3 decibels of a field measured versus what the computer model is predicting. If you're less than 3 decibels or less, then the model is considered valid to use, and everything is desktop.
And what time do you do these?
We always do. You always try to do it like on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. DOT usually frowns upon Monday and Friday because there could be variations in traffic. We don't do it on holidays. We try to get a representative speed during a midweek condition, but this is only to validate the model.
What time do you do these?
The measurements were taken all day long. PGA, we started at 9 in the morning. Steeplechase, I believe by then we were probably 1:30, 2 o'clock, 2:30 at Steeplechase. But this is just these measurements are only designed to determine if you go out.
So let me understand. I know you keep talking, so we got to get in here with you as well. So let me understand. Your measurements are taken between 9 and 1, because that's what you just said.
Yep, 1 or 2 o'clock.
You don't do it at 7:30 to 8:30 or 4:30 to 6?
When most traffic is.
Because to me, more traffic is more noise.
I know, but the field measured numbers do not make a basis of determination for a noise barrier. The field measured numbers only make a basis of determination as to whether this computer model can take desktop information and calculate a sound level within 3 decibels of the actual ambient condition.
Would you agree that the traffic on 95 is much louder than the traffic on the B line?
Depending where you stand, of course.
Because there's 100 times much more traffic?
I wouldn't say it's 100 much more.
Or whatever. Just saying the traffic, the more density of the traffic, the more noise they're going to have, the more density of the noise, the farther it's going to carry.
Higher traffic volumes and higher speeds generate the greatest sound levels. When you get into a condition where the road starts to back up at level of service D, E, and F, you don't get a higher sound level. When we look at the traffic for the model for the department, we use level of service C or demand, whichever is less, because you want to get a free flow condition. But what I'm saying is, when you take the field measurements, it is only for one thing. It's good to know the ambient out there. I know what the ambient is out in Steeplechase right now. I was in the backyards, and I was in PGA, and I was in Iron Horse. And I know what those numbers were, but those numbers have to go into the model using an existing roadway alignment with the cars that we count, the radar gun speeds we get, and if you come within 3, and I can tell you PGA, the average was 0.9, Steeplechase, the average was 2.3. And then
So we're saying that Steeplechase is very close to qualifying for this wall.
No, I'm saying PGA had a better chance to qualify because you cannot qualify for a noise barrier consideration for a single receptor location. It's not feasible by definition. It's a fatal flaw. PGA had the greatest chance of qualifying because the minute you get 2 impacted receptors, you have to computer model a wall to determine, 1, can I meet the 5 decibels? Can 2 or more meet 5? That means they would both have to. And then out of those 2, can 1 meet 7? So if I can meet the feasibility factor, which is a noise reduction factor of 5, I move forward. If I can meet the 7, which is a noise reduction design goal reasonableness factor, I move forward.
In your experience, I'm sorry, let me ask this one. In your experience, because you got 30 years, you have however many years you have.
25 years.
So we have crime, we have traffic, we have dirt, we have debris, we have all these things that aren't factored into the decisions for DOT to put up this wall. Has the state ever wavered slightly to the benefit of the community because there's multiple variations that this wall could be needed for?
DOT has a new policy that came out several years back where in lieu of a noise barrier, you can petition a state for what's called a privacy wall. I do not believe this corridor would qualify for a privacy wall, as I've already talked to the district noise specialist about it. So the noise study that the department conducts under their policy, which is approved by Federal Highway, And I understand, but it has nothing to do with dust or debris or cars flying off the road. It's very straightforward. You have to have an impact of 66.0 or greater. Once you have that, you have to model a barrier. If there's two locations, if Steeplechase would have had 9 homes in a row that were impacted, easily a wall would work. But when you don't have a single location, it's a fatal flaw. There's no place to go. You can't meet the first hurdle, so you don't even have to go to the next 2.
All right. We have 20 minutes, so let me see if I can wrap this up. Your presentation obviously doesn't make anyone in this room happy. I am going to read a letter that was written to Jerry O'Reilly from Nick Uren, who is the Executive Director of the Transportation Planning Agency, because Hal Valashay and myself, Hal is the chair of this, I'm the vice chair, to Jerry O'Reilly. During our review of the draft fiscal year 1923 Transportation Improvement Program, Palm Beach Gardens Mayor Maria Marino relayed residents' concerns from the Steeplechase community regarding the above project to be constructed FDOT fiscal year 22. In response to this information, the TPA Governing Board directed me to write you and request that FDOT perform a thorough analysis of all potentially adverse impacts, including noise and visual impacts associated with this roadway project. They further directed me to request that FDOT incorporate any and all measures necessary to fully mitigate these impacts on the adjacent communities. The Palm Beach TPA appreciates your partnership in providing mobility improvements that address our growing transportation demands while retaining our excellent quality of life. So, I have 15 cards. I think I can sum up all of your words if you don't mind me taking a moment. We're all very unhappy. And it's not just about noise. It's about safety. It's about debris. It's about quality of life. It's about losing the value of their homes. And we invited Representative Roth, Senator Roth, I got that right the first time, Representative Roth and Senator Powell to be here this evening. I know that Bobby had a conflict, and our lobbyist, Matt Forrest, is here also. And I think it is going to be the will of this council that, as the mayor and our lobbyist and our local legislators who deal with the state of Florida, go to Tallahassee and fight for our constituents. And I know that each one would like to get up and say, we want a wall, we want some mitigation and whatnot. I think I can save them the time. We're very unhappy. They're very unhappy. You can all applaud. Yeah. So, is there anyone whose card I have, and I would be happy to read your names into the record, but is there anything I didn't cover? Okay, all right. I've got, well, we have 15 cards here, so, and at 3 minutes a card, we won't be out of here till 7:30, and our council meeting is supposed to start at 7. So, Ed Mostel, sound measurements of Beeline. Is there anything you'd like to add? Come up to the microphone, name and address for the record, please. After that would be Hal Valashay. And yes, if you can do your words in about a minute, we'd be good.
Okay. Ed Mostel, I live in PGA, in the area of Preston, where we're most afflicted by the Beeline.
1 minute.
The question I have is, how are these audio analysis done? Our neighbor told us, so this is secondhand, that they were asked if people could come in between 9 and 12 and listen at the back of their house. And the issue I have, and you actually, I think, agreed to this, or made this comment, that it was done, the house was protecting them from the sound. These people live both in the back of the house and the front of the house, and the front of the house is very close to the Beeline and North Lake, so I would think the sound would be even higher there, and that would be a more logical place to take the measurement. And of course, there's no logical reason to do it from 9 to 12 if you want to see the impact of the sound from this change. It's much better to do it when the volume is higher, when the car volume is higher. But that's my statement.
Thank you. I think that there's no answer.
No, I answered it before. I said that Noise barrier placement is based on a design year 2042 build sound level, which it's not 2042 yet. It's based on that design year traffic level.
Okay, let me interrupt, because we've all heard that 3 times,
Oh,
4
boy.
times. No, with due respect. Why would you not do the analysis, even though it's secondary, in the front of the house, which is closest to the source of the sound?
Maybe I didn't tell you this. The computer predicted receptor locations, the closest edge of the home, closest to the roadway, is where the coordinate geometry is developed. So if we're at 125 Brookhaven Court, that receptor point is put 5 feet above the ground level at the closest edge of the home, closest to B-line. We don't put the receptor points on the backside by the pool if it's further back. They're always put at the closest edge. Like Steeplechase, the closest edge of RSC 50, which is the pool area, which is in the front, and the closest edge of the tennis court area. And for PGA, all along Brookhaven, all the way down there, it was the closest edge of the home, closest to the B-line. The field measured numbers, it doesn't matter when you take them anymore because it's only used for one thing. It's only used to determine if I wanted a representative time frame and I count X amount of vehicles and I have a radar gun speed of those vehicles and I put the separation distances into the model and I put the instrumentation's A-weighted sound level over 10 minutes in there, the traffic's multiplied by 6 for an hourly volume. If I can come within 3 decibels, the model is considered valid by definition with FHWA, then everything else is desktop. So those numbers are, it's fine. Yeah, it's probably noisy, real noisy at 7:30 in the morning, but at the end of the day,
Okay. All right, yes, thank you. Hal, you're next. And then Sal Faso, if you have anything to add. And Charles Fisher, if you have anything to add.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to add my voice to what you've done, all of you, very, very capably, which is to raise all of the objections that I have. It seems counterintuitive to me that if you make this much of a change to that road, that you don't get an impact that's much greater than what the models are predicting. Noise is one thing. What bothers me even more is the grade issue. I think that is a very, very serious concern. I don't know that the science can contemplate what that. I don't think you can translate that into science and into numbers, but it's clearly, a serious issue that I think we're very justified in being concerned about. I would point out that don't lose hope. We had an issue at Steeplechase where I lived at the time, back in 2009 with the Turnpike interchange. DOT and us were able to work that out and come to a resolution that was very satisfactory to the residents. I'm hopeful that that's what's going to occur in this situation. So
Thank you, Hal. Sal, anything to add?
Hi, Sal Faso. I'm here not only as as you know, the president of the North County Neighborhood Coalition, but as a resident of Ibis. So I'd like to make one correction to the gentleman who presented, Mr. Pizzosa, that this is not just the Palm Beach Gardens issue. We have 11 communities that are here tonight from the North County Neighborhood Coalition. Several of those are in unincorporated Palm Beach County, and some are in West Palm Beach as well. And the reason why we're here is we travel that intersection day in and day out from 6:30 in the morning, sometimes 6 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock at night. We know it exceptionally well. The other thing is I'd like to point out at the last FDOT workshop, which we attended mutually, they're using numbers that are not the same numbers that the county has as far as traffic projections. So I don't know what numbers they're using to project what's going through that intersection. I was just with David Ricks, the traffic engineer. We have 33,000 cars a day going on North Lake Boulevard east and west. And with those developments, and Sarah Peters back here, the reporter from the Post, gave an excellent report on what's going to happen with the growth in the western development, that intersection is going to have over 78,000 cars going through it. So I don't know what numbers they're using to determine decibel levels.
Thank you, Sal. Charles Fisher, anything to add? And then after Charles, I hope I don't... Joshua Solano?
Hi, Charles Fisher, Steeplechase. Under the assumption that the study or the testing that was done for sound was for the new highway and not the existing highway that's there, when you went to the back of the house or the front of the house, which is closest to the road, and you knew that road was going to be expanded by 15 feet, let's say, Why didn't you move the sound device 15 feet closer to the highway to get a representative sound level at that location for the expanded highway?
Like I said before, the field measured sound levels are only for one thing. It's only to determine if the sound level you measure can be replicated by the model based upon the same input geometry.
But you're using this information as a threshold for two
no,
sensors.
I'm not. No, I'm not. What I'm doing is I'm going out in the field and I'm measuring the existing ambient sound level. I know exactly where it is in latitude and longitude. It's converted to state plane coordinate. It's put into the existing roadway alignment, and I need to know if the model, if this computer model software can come within 3 decibels of what I'm measuring. That means it's valid. For noise barrier placement, it only focuses on one component, the 2042.
I don't think we're going to get the answer you're looking for or we're looking for.
Well, the field measure, you gotta see,
He's using this as a criteria for
No,
2
I'm not.
households,
No, I'm not.
but he's not moving the equipment.
I'm not. I'm not using that for any criteria. All I'm using the field measured numbers for is to determine, can this computer model replicate what a person measures in the field within 3 decibels. After that, the field measurements have nothing to do with barrier placement. Barrier placement has to do with the 2042 design your traffic volume for a 6-lane urban suburban.
We need to move on. I apologize. I know that's not what you want to hear, but we need to move on. I got a lot more cards. Amir, do you want to speak? Yeah. You're on the clock. And then Matilda.
So,
Come
Amir
and
Kanel,
get in line if you have anything to add.
I'm on the board of directors, and I have questions, but I'm not going to ask them. I'm just going to make a... First of all, I think the sound testing that you made are flawed from the start. If you do a sound study, you do it over 6 months to a year. You don't do it just one day. Sound travel by it's basically pressure, sound pressures. Depends where the wind blows, depends what kind of truck's going, and you don't have any idea what the future will be. That's number one. Steeplechase need a buffer. The idea is just to get some kind of a buffer because facts have changed, just like you said before, so I'm just kind of reinstating that. As my experience in the zoning commissioner now for the county, anytime a new business comes or we change zoning or something has changed, there's some kind of buffer needs to be installed. And this is what the state has to do, and this is what they have to do at this time. It's not just about the noise, and let's not hover just about the noise. It's about the other things as well. Thank you.
I also, after Matilda is Alan. Is it Matilda or Matilda? Alan Kessman and Kirk Seipel. If you have anything additional to add, not to repeat and not to ask any more questions, just please statements.
Good evening. My name is Matilda Lanier. I live at 8300 Steeplechase Drive. My family's lived in Steeplechase for 30 years. I want to thank City Council for your extreme support on behalf of our community. This is a very big issue for our community, so we thank you very much. We remember similar discussions regarding the Turnpike overpass between North Lake and Beeline Highway just a few short years ago. Ultimately, the protection and interests of Steeplechase were realized because someone, with the help of legislature, stepped up to the plate and funded the monies for the protection of our western perimeter. You have an obligation to do the same thing along this Beeline Highway. We recognize the study that you presented tonight does not qualify us, but in spite of those findings presented here tonight, this project will have a negative impact on our community in sound and safety. It is imperative that you go to any entity necessary to get the funding necessary to provide Steeplechase with a wall. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alan and then Kirk and then Susan. And you're Alan, that's right. Thank you.
Kirk Seipel, 8139 Man of War Road in Steeplechase. I've been involved in construction and real estate businesses for the past 30 years. I also have an undergraduate degree in applied mathematics, and I'm here to say that we are being duped because these field measurements are irrelevant. The field measurements are purely being used to confirm a mathematical model, which is a statistical projection of what it is likely to be. All right? That's it. 66 decibels is the threshold measurement for this. Well, why? Because normal conversation is supposed to be around 65 to 68 decibels, and that's probably, although I don't know for certainty, why they're using this as the standard. But the issue is this. Anyone who knows anything knows that an idling truck, a bulldozer, idles at 80 to 85 decibels. Prolonged exposure to 85 decibels will cause noise-induced hearing loss. Anybody who's been out there at 7 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning knows that noise is above normal conversation.
Thank you. Okay, no more clapping, you guys. We got to get through these. I have Susan, and then Andrew Schneider, and then Tomas, and then Mark. If you have anything additional to add.
Susan Hatfield,
Okay.
Steeplechase. One is, can we get a copy of the report? And number two, the noise study, right? And then the other one was, I think that this is very misleading. It should show our current wall and where it is, because I'm sure it's probably about the shoulders of these people, right? Right?
In certain areas, yes.
Yeah, and I think it's important because people who haven't visited there don't know it.
Thank you. Andrew?
Thank you. Andrew Schneider, 5543 Seabiscuit Road, Palm Beach Gardens. I'm a 20-year Steeplechase resident. I very much appreciate the council's support for our community. I have two comments. First is that I think it was essentially insulting that a full noise study was not provided to your council, to the public, so we could really evaluate critically the comments of the noise specialist. That study was provided years ago, but they didn't provide it this time. The other thing is that the comment was made that a perimeter wall would not be allowed for the community, but the FDOT's own guidelines indicate that a perimeter wall should be provided to provide a separation between a highway and an adjacent land user where there is visual intrusion, providing a visual screen when vegetation is not sufficient. So this is in their own guidelines that should be provided. The last comment I want to make is that Steeplechase is a community that houses a population of sandhill cranes that are an endangered species, and they have not yet done an endangered species biological assessment study.
Thank you. Thank you. Tomas, are you going to? And then I have Mark Miller, and the last card is David Moore.
I'm Tomas de Mateis, 220 Thornton Drive, Palm Beach Gardens. I hear very much about a steeplechase. I would like also to hear something about Preston, which apparently has a major issue, bigger issue than actually steeplechase, and we should be involved. Now, my question is simple. Why are we doing this? What's the benefit? From my experience, the flow of traffic today is North Lake going from one side to the other. It's not the beeline. This is an invention of like the same invention they had when they did Jock Road. And then we were told at that time that it was because people wanted to go to church and it would be a shortcut so they could go to church.
Thank you. Mark Miller?
Yes, Mark Miller. I live on Brookhaven Court in the Preston section of PGA National. We literally look outside our front windows to the intersection of North Lake and Beeline. And I appreciate the position that the council's taking on behalf of Steeplechase, but what about us? I mean, you know, we need this wall just as much in Preston section of PGA National as they do in Steeplechase, so please include us in your objections.
Thank you very much. David, you have the last comments, and can you be brief? Yeah, sure. Can this gentleman be brief? We're cutting you off.
I'm going to try, but first of all, I'd just like to thank you guys, our commissioner, our state senator, the police chief, and I'm wondering why we're all on one side of the table and FDOT's on the other. I'm wondering who they serve. I had to chase them down 6 years ago when they first presented this to the public in a 150-year-old schoolhouse in Indiantown. When they first announced it, when they had the first meeting last year, they invited 12 people from Steeplechase. They try to keep it as quiet as possible because they don't really serve the public. They do what minimum they have to for the Sunshine Law. 6 years ago when they first presented it, we had 8 homes that qualify. How 6 years later do we have 1? And how is it 65.8 decibels as opposed to 66? And how on earth does a sound wall that's effectively 14 feet high doesn't reduce it by 5 decibels? It's just junk science, okay? I was out there, Mr. Kenny, when you were taking your readings the other day, and the height of the microphone is below the current wall, below where someone would normally stand.
5 feet off the ground like it's supposed to be.
5 feet off the ground, I stand almost 6. I just want to say, Mr. Donovan, Mr. Pessoa, when you were here last August, you came into the meeting skeptical, and you left here saying that you support our wall. You know, I know we invited your superiors, and I guess they just left you here by yourself. Safety and protection, that's what this is all about. There are a dozen homes, one next to the other on Seabiscuit Lane. How on earth can one be affected and the other 11 not? They're all the same. I don't know what tennis court you're talking about. There is no tennis court
David?
directly facing the wall on
Wrap
Seabiscuit.
it up, please, so we can continue.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And if it pleases the council, I would like to, if the council approves, direct the city manager to let's take this. Obviously, it looks like we have to go on a political route, and we are happy to do that. I'm sure I have the support of the council. So, city manager, can you get with our lobbyists, our local legislators, and
be happy to work with you and our legislators and our lobbyists to try to have some impact at the district office and see if we can have some influence there, and then move as appropriate as our strategy is that we can apply to go further if necessary. We'll get together as soon as possible and develop our strategy and move forward.
thank you very much. And I appreciate all of you coming here. You know how we feel. FDOT, thank you for presenting. You just are presenting numbers. We have emotions and quality of life to deal with. So at this time, I'd like to adjourn the meeting. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we will continue with our regularly scheduled general council meeting.